On June 20th, 1810, in the cobblestone streets of Stockholm, one of Europe's most elegant aristocrats was torn apart by an enraged mob. Count Axel von Fersen, once the confidant of kings and queens, lay bleeding in the dirt as hundreds of fists and stones rained down upon his broken body. The man who had danced in the golden halls of Versailles, who had whispered secrets to Marie Antoinette herself, died like a criminal in the mud. But this wasn't just political revenge. According to contemporary accounts, there was something darker driving the crowd's fury. Whispers about the Count's secret life that even death couldn't silence. History remembers Axel von Fersen as the dashing Swedish nobleman who loved a doomed queen. The official story speaks of his desperate attempts to save Marie Antoinette from the guillotine, of political intrigue and revolutionary chaos. Yet behind this romantic narrative lies a more complex truth, one involving forbidden desires, dangerous liaisons, and a double life that may have ultimately sealed his fate. Fersen was the perfect embodiment of 18th century aristocratic refinement, tall, elegant, with piercing blue eyes, and an air of mysterious sophistication that captivated both men and women across European courts. But perfection, historians suggest, was his carefully constructed mask. If you're intrigued by stories of hidden lives and forbidden secrets, make sure to subscribe for more untold histories that challenge everything you thought you knew about the past. Born into Swedish nobility in 1755, Fersen possessed everything a man of his era could desire: wealth, title, beauty, and unprecedented access to power. He spoke multiple languages fluently, moved through European courts with ease, and commanded attention wherever he appeared. Yet contemporary letters and diplomatic reports hint at something that set him apart from his peers, an intensity in his personal relationships that raised eyebrows even in the libertine atmosphere of pre-revolutionary Europe. The Swedish court was notorious for its gossip, and rumors about young nobles were currency in aristocratic circles. According to various court memoirs, whispers began to circulate about Fersen's unusually close friendships with certain gentlemen of the Swedish nobility. These weren't mere allegations of friendship. Contemporary sources suggest something far more intimate and dangerous for a man in his position. What made these relationships particularly perilous was the social and legal context of the time. While aristocratic men often maintained close male companionships, anything beyond that carried severe consequences. For someone with Fersen's political ambitions and social standing, such rumors could destroy everything he had worked to build. But Fersen was either remarkably brave or dangerously reckless. Historical evidence suggests he continued to maintain these intense relationships even as his public career flourished. Letters preserved in Swedish archives reference mysterious meetings, coded language, and relationships that seemed to transcend typical aristocratic friendship. What drove this man to risk everything for connections that society deemed forbidden? And how did these secrets intertwine with his more famous obsession with the French queen, creating a web of desire and deception that would ultimately lead him to that brutal death in Stockholm's streets? Count Hans Axel von Fersen was born on September 4th, 1755, into a world where bloodlines determined destiny and appearances meant survival. His father, Frederick Axel von Fersen, was one of Sweden's most powerful political figures, a man who wielded influence like a sword and expected his children to uphold the family's impeccable reputation. The Fersen estate at Löfstad was a monument to aristocratic power, its grand halls echoing with the footsteps of diplomats and nobles who shaped the fate of nations. From his earliest years, young Axel stood out among his siblings. While his brothers followed predictable paths of military service and administrative duty, Axel displayed what his tutors described as an unusual sensitivity and remarkable attention to beauty and refinement. Contemporary family letters suggest he showed more interest in art, languages, and philosophical discussions than in the traditional pursuits expected of Swedish nobility. His mother, Hedvig Katarina de la Gardie, came from an equally illustrious lineage and possessed what court observers called an almost mystical understanding of people's hidden natures. According to family memoirs, she recognized early that Axel was different from his brothers. not in intelligence or capability, but in the intensity with which he approached relationships and experiences. The Swedish court of King Gustav III was unlike any other European royal court of the time. Gustav himself was rumored to have unconventional desires, and his court became a haven for artistic expression and intellectual freedom that bordered on the scandalous. In this environment, young Axel's unusual mannerisms and intense friendships were not just tolerated, but almost celebrated as signs of sophistication and continental refinement. Historical records from the Royal Archives in Stockholm reveal that Axel formed his first intensely close male friendship at the age of 16 with Baron Erik Magnus Style von Holstein, a relationship that court observers described as unusually devoted and beyond ordinary friendship. Letters between the two, preserved in the National Archives, contain language that scholars interpret as far more intimate than typical aristocratic correspondence of the period. His education was meticulously planned to prepare him for diplomatic service. He studied in Germany and France, absorbing not just languages and etiquette, but also the complex social codes that governed European aristocracy. During these formative years abroad, tutors' reports mention his extraordinary charm with both sexes and his ability to form connections of unusual depth and loyalty. But it was also during this period that the first whispers began. Fellow students at his German academy noted what they called his peculiar attachments to certain classmates. While such relationships were common in aristocratic education, contemporary letters suggest that Axel's connections carried an emotional intensity that made others uncomfortable. By the age of 20, when he was preparing to enter formal diplomatic service, Axel von Fersen had already established a pattern that would define his entire life. He formed relationships that were deeper, more passionate, and more dangerous than society expected or could safely tolerate. His family's wealth and position protected him from immediate consequences. But even his influential father began to worry about the whispers that followed his son through European courts. What none of them could have predicted was how these early patterns would intersect with the greatest political upheaval of their time, creating a deadly combination of personal desire and political catastrophe that would ultimately destroy them all. In 1774, at the age of 19, Count Axel von Fersen stepped into a world that would define the rest of his life and ultimately destroy him. The Palace of Versailles rose before him like a golden maze, its countless mirrors reflecting not just light, but the ambitions, desires, and secrets of the most powerful people in Europe. He had come to France as part of his diplomatic education, but what he found there would awaken hungers that no amount of aristocratic privilege could safely satisfy. The France of Louis XVI was a nation balanced on the edge of a knife. Beneath the glittering surface of court life, financial crisis and social unrest were brewing like a storm. Yet for a young Swedish nobleman with impeccable manners and devastating charm, Versailles offered opportunities that existed nowhere else in Europe. Here, political alliances were forged through seduction, secrets were currency, and a man's ability to navigate the treacherous waters of desire and power could elevate him to unimaginable heights. Contemporary accounts describe Fersen's arrival at court as nothing short of sensational. The Duke of Croy wrote in his memoirs that the young Swede possessed a beauty and grace that turned heads throughout the palace. Within weeks, invitations poured in from the most exclusive salons. Both men and women vied for his attention, sensing something magnetic about this foreign nobleman who spoke perfect French and carried himself with an air of mysterious sophistication. But it was the political atmosphere of Versailles that truly captivated him. The French court was a theater where every gesture carried meaning, every conversation held potential for advancement or destruction. According to diplomatic correspondence preserved in the French Foreign Ministry archives, Fersen quickly demonstrated an intuitive understanding of these complex power dynamics that impressed even seasoned courtiers. His first significant connection was with the Duc de Polignac, a man known for his liberal views and his circle of intellectuals and artists. Historical records suggest their relationship was immediate and intense, with the Duke becoming what contemporaries described as Fersen's closest confidant and guide to French customs. Letters between them, discovered in the Polignac family archives, contain language that scholars interpret as unusually intimate for the period. Through Polignac, Fersen gained access to the inner circles of Versailles society. He attended private salons where philosophy and politics were discussed with a freedom impossible in other European courts. But more significantly, these gatherings brought him into contact with individuals who shared what historians delicately term unconventional social arrangements. The atmosphere of pre-revolutionary France was remarkably tolerant of aristocratic eccentricities, provided they remained discreet. As long as appearances were maintained and dynastic duties fulfilled, the nobility enjoyed freedoms that would have scandalized courts elsewhere in Europe. For someone like Fersen, carrying secrets that could destroy him in other capitals, France offered the possibility of living more authentically than ever before. Yet even as he reveled in this newfound freedom, danger was approaching from an unexpected direction. Because in the spring of 1774, a shy Austrian archduchess named Marie Antoinette was about to become Queen of France. Their meeting would create the most famous love affair of the 18th century, but it would also provide the perfect cover for relationships that were far more dangerous and much closer to his heart. Their first meeting has become the stuff of legend, immortalized in countless books and films as the beginning of one of history's greatest forbidden love affairs. It was January 30th, 1774, at a masked ball in the Paris Opera House. Marie Antoinette, then still the Dauphin of France, was 19 years old, beautiful, and desperately lonely in a foreign court that watched her every move. Count Axel von Fersen was 18, devastatingly handsome, and about to become entangled in a relationship that would define both their fates. According to the memoirs of Madame Campan, Marie Antoinette's lady-in-waiting, the attraction was instantaneous and mutual. The young Austrian princess had been struggling to find her place in the rigid hierarchy of Versailles, where every smile was scrutinized and every friendship carried political implications. In Fersen, she found someone who could offer her what she desperately craved: genuine companionship without the suffocating weight of French court protocol. For Fersen, the relationship with the future Queen of France was both a triumph and a convenient shield. Historical evidence suggests that while his affection for Marie Antoinette was genuine, it also provided perfect cover for aspects of his life that required discretion. Court observers noted that his obvious devotion to the Queen deflected attention from his other intense relationships, particularly with certain male courtiers who had become his constant companions. Contemporary diplomatic reports describe how Fersen became Marie Antoinette's most trusted confidant. He was one of the few people who could make her laugh, who treated her as Marie rather than as a symbol of Austrian alliance. Their correspondence, much of which was discovered and published after the Revolution, reveals a relationship of remarkable intimacy and mutual dependence. But this was never just a simple love affair. As historian Stefan Zweig noted in his biographical studies, Fersen's position gave him unprecedented access to French state secrets at a time when European alliances were shifting like quicksand. Sweden's diplomatic interests often conflicted with France's, creating a dangerous situation where personal loyalty and national duty pulled in opposite directions. Tell me in the comments what part of this story shocks you the most so far. And if you're enjoying this documentary, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this. The political dimensions of their relationship became increasingly complex as France slid toward financial crisis. Marie Antoinette's growing unpopularity with the French people made any association with her potentially toxic. Yet Fersen's loyalty never wavered. Court records show that he spent enormous sums of his own money to support her during increasingly desperate times. What makes their relationship particularly fascinating to historians is how it functioned on multiple levels simultaneously. While the public saw a romantic attachment between a foreign nobleman and their queen, those closest to Fersen understood that his emotional life was far more complicated. Letters from Swedish diplomatic archives suggest that even as he devoted himself publicly to Marie Antoinette, he maintained what contemporaries described as passionate friendships with men who moved in similar circles. The genius of this arrangement was its perfect plausibility. A heterosexual love affair, even a scandalous one, was infinitely safer than the alternatives. As long as Fersen could point to his devotion to the Queen, other questions about his private life remained unasked. But this delicate balance was about to be shattered by the growing chaos of revolutionary France, where secrets had a way of becoming weapons in the wrong hands. While all of Europe gossiped about Count Fersen's devotion to Marie Antoinette, a different story was unfolding in the shadows of Versailles, one that involved secret meetings, coded letters, and a relationship that threatened to destroy everything he had built. According to court memoirs and diplomatic correspondence from the period, Fersen's most intense and dangerous liaison was not with the Queen of France, but with a fellow Swedish nobleman whose very presence at court raised questions that could never be answered publicly. The man's name was Count Gustav Maurits Armfelt, a diplomat in service to King Gustav III of Sweden. Contemporary accounts describe him as extraordinarily handsome, intellectually brilliant, and possessed of what one observer called an almost feminine grace that captivated all who encountered him. More significantly, historical evidence suggests that Armfelt shared certain inclinations that made him understand Fersen in ways that Marie Antoinette, despite her affection, never could. Their relationship began, according to surviving letters, as a professional collaboration. Both men were representing Swedish interests in France during a period of complex international negotiations. But diplomatic correspondence preserved in the Swedish National Archives reveals that their connection quickly evolved into something far more personal and perilous. Letters between them contain language that scholars interpret as going well beyond typical diplomatic courtesy or even close friendship. What made their relationship particularly dangerous was the social context of the time. While the French court tolerated many forms of aristocratic excess, certain boundaries could never be openly crossed. Historian Michel Rey, in his studies of 18th century French society, notes that aristocratic men who maintained such relationships had to develop elaborate systems of concealment and misdirection to survive in court society. For Fersen and Armfelt, this meant conducting their most intimate communications through intermediaries and coded language. Letters discovered in the Armfelt family archives contain references to private consultations and matters requiring the utmost discretion that historians believe masked the true nature of their relationship. They met in locations carefully chosen for their privacy: remote chambers in Versailles, private salons in Paris, and country estates, where they could speak freely without fear of observation. The intensity of their connection created practical complications that went far beyond personal risk. Both men held sensitive diplomatic positions at a time when Sweden's relationship with France was crucial to European balance of power. Their personal bond created potential conflicts of interest that could have compromised Swedish foreign policy, making their relationship not just socially unacceptable, but potentially treasonous. Contemporary observers noted changes in both men's behavior during periods when they were separated by diplomatic duties. The Marquis de Bombelle wrote in his journal about Fersen's melancholy during Armfelt's absence from court, describing it as far exceeding what one would expect from mere professional collaboration or casual friendship. Perhaps most tellingly, their relationship required the active participation of others who helped maintain the fiction of normalcy. Marie Antoinette herself, according to some historical interpretations, may have been aware of the true nature of Fersen's emotional attachments and chosen to provide protective cover through their very public association. But as the French Revolution approached and paranoia gripped the court, maintaining such elaborate deceptions became increasingly difficult. Soon, the very people who had once protected their secrets would become their greatest threats, and the carefully constructed walls around their private world would begin to crumble. By 1789, the glittering world of Versailles was collapsing around Count Fersen and everyone he held dear. The French Revolution had erupted with a violence that shocked European aristocracy, and suddenly, the delicate games of court intrigue had become matters of life and death. For a man carrying dangerous secrets while trying to navigate the treacherous waters of revolutionary politics, every decision could mean the difference between survival and the guillotine. Historical records from the French National Archives reveal that Fersen's position became impossibly complex as the revolution gained momentum. As a Swedish diplomat, he was technically neutral in French internal affairs. As Marie Antoinette's closest confidant, he was intimately involved in royalist resistance efforts. And as a man whose personal relationships could destroy him if exposed, he had to maintain absolute discretion while operating in an environment where paranoia and denunciation had become weapons of mass destruction. The autumn of 1789 brought the first real test of Fersen's ability to balance these competing demands. When the royal family was forced to move from Versailles to the Tuileries Palace in Paris, Fersen found himself at the center of increasingly desperate attempts to organize their escape. Contemporary correspondence shows that he began coordinating with other European monarchs to arrange financial and military support for a counter-revolution that could restore the old order. But these activities placed him in mortal danger. Revolutionary authorities had begun systematic surveillance of all foreign diplomats, particularly those suspected of royalist sympathies. According to police reports preserved in the Archives de la Bastille, Fersen's name appeared on multiple watch lists as early as 1790. His frequent visits to the Tuileries, his known devotion to Marie Antoinette, and his connections to other European courts made him an obvious target for revolutionary justice. What made his situation even more precarious was the knowledge that exposure of his personal life could be used as a weapon against him. Revolutionary newspapers delighted in exposing the decadent behavior of aristocrats, and sexual scandal had become a favored tool for destroying political enemies. Letters from Swedish diplomatic archives suggest that Fersen lived in constant fear that his relationship with Armfeldt or other intimate connections could be discovered and used to blackmail or discredit him. The pressure of maintaining these multiple deceptions while operating in increasingly dangerous circumstances began to take its toll. Contemporary observers noted changes in Fersen's appearance and behavior. The confident charm that had once captivated Versailles was replaced by what the Marquis de Bombelle described as a haunted vigilance, as if he expected betrayal from every shadow. Yet he pressed forward with plans that would have terrified a less committed man. By early 1791, Fersen had become one of the principal architects of what would become known as the Flight to Varennes, a desperate attempt to smuggle the entire royal family out of France to safety in Austria. The plan required enormous courage, meticulous preparation, and absolute secrecy. It also demanded that Fersen risk everything he had built, including relationships that had sustained him through years of careful concealment. Unknown to him, revolutionary spies had already begun to unravel the conspiracy. Soon, the most audacious rescue attempt of the 18th century would become a catastrophic failure that would seal the fate of everyone involved. On the night of June 20th, 1791, Count Axel von Fersen executed the most daring rescue operation of the 18th century. Under cover of darkness, he personally drove the carriage that smuggled the entire French royal family out of Paris, past revolutionary guards, and toward what they hoped would be safety and freedom. For Marie Antoinette, it was their last chance at survival. For Fersen, it was the culmination of months of meticulous planning that had required him to risk not just his own life, but the diplomatic relationships that protected his deepest secrets. Historical accounts from participants reveal the extraordinary complexity of the escape plan. Fersen had coordinated with Austrian and Prussian forces to position troops along the escape route. He had arranged fresh horses at multiple relay stations, secured false passports, and even designed a specially modified carriage that could carry the entire royal family while appearing to be an ordinary merchant's vehicle. According to his own correspondence, preserved in the Swedish National Archives, he had spent nearly 100,000 livres of his personal fortune financing the operation. But the plan required Fersen to personally drive the first stage of the journey, placing him in immediate physical danger while simultaneously exposing him to political catastrophe if discovered. As a Swedish diplomat, his involvement in the escape would constitute a violation of neutrality that could destroy Sweden's relationships with whatever government emerged from the revolution. More personally, capture would mean exposure of all his activities, including relationships that had been carefully hidden for years. Contemporary accounts describe the tension of that night in vivid detail. The Marquise de Tourzel, who accompanied the royal family, wrote in her memoirs that Fersen displayed remarkable composure under circumstances that would have broken lesser men. Yet she also noted that his hands shook as he helped Marie Antoinette into the carriage, suggesting the enormous emotional and physical strain he was enduring. The escape began successfully. Fersen guided the carriage through the dark streets of Paris, past sleeping guards and through checkpoints where false documents allowed them to pass undetected. For several hours, it appeared that the most audacious rescue in European history might actually succeed. Marie Antoinette later wrote that those hours in the carriage with Fersen were among the few moments of peace she had experienced since the revolution began. But fate had other plans. At the town of Varennes, just 30 miles from safety, the royal family was recognized by a local postmaster who had seen the king's portrait on currency. Revolutionary forces were alerted, and within hours, the entire escape party was surrounded by hostile crowds and National Guard units. The dream of freedom collapsed in a matter of minutes, and with it, any hope of restoring the old order through peaceful means. For Fersen, the failure at Varennes created an immediate crisis that went far beyond political disappointment. His role in the escape attempt was now known to revolutionary authorities, making it impossible for him to remain in France. But more dangerously, the investigation that followed threatened to expose aspects of his life that had been carefully concealed for years. Revolutionary prosecutors, eager to discredit the escape attempt, began examining every aspect of his relationships and motivations. Letters intercepted by police and preserved in revolutionary archives reveal that investigators had begun asking uncomfortable questions about Fersen's unusually intense devotion to the Queen, his financial sacrifices for the royal family, and his relationships with other men who had participated in the conspiracy. The failure at Varennes shattered more than just an escape plan. It destroyed Count Fersen's carefully constructed world. By the summer of 1791, he could no longer safely remain in France, where his name had become synonymous with royalist conspiracy. The man who had once moved freely through European courts now found himself a political refugee, forced to flee the country where he had experienced both his greatest triumphs and most intimate connections. What awaited him in Sweden was a different kind of prison, the suffocating isolation of a fallen favorite in a world that no longer had use for his particular talents. According to Swedish diplomatic records, Fersen's return to Stockholm in late 1791 was met with official coolness that bordered on hostility. King Gustav III, while publicly supportive of his diplomatic service, privately expressed concerns about the political complications Fersen's French adventures had created for Swedish foreign policy. The careful neutrality Sweden had maintained during the early stages of the revolution was now compromised by his subjects' obvious involvement in royalist plots. More personally devastating was the discovery that his relationship with Count Armfeldt had become a subject of court gossip during his absence. Letters preserved in the Armfeldt family archives suggest that their correspondence had been intercepted and read by Swedish intelligence services, creating a scandal that could only be managed through careful distancing. The reunion Fersen had anticipated became instead a painful recognition that the political climate in Sweden had changed dramatically, making their former intimacy impossible to sustain. Historical accounts from Swedish court observers describe Fersen's visible deterioration during this period. The confident charm that had once captivated Versailles was replaced by what Baron Gustav Armfeldt described as a melancholy that seemed to consume him from within. He had lost not just his political influence, but the network of relationships that had sustained him emotionally for over a decade. The broader European political landscape offered little comfort. The execution of Louis XVII in 1793, followed by Marie Antoinette's death later that year, eliminated the last justification for his years of sacrifice and risk. According to his correspondence with surviving French émigrés, Fersen blamed himself for the failure that had sealed their fate, carrying guilt that historians suggest contributed to his increasing withdrawal from public life. Financial pressures compounded his isolation. The enormous sums he had spent supporting the French royal family had severely damaged his personal fortune. Swedish treasury records show that he was forced to sell properties and liquidate investments to maintain his lifestyle, further reducing his independence and political influence. The man who had once hosted lavish entertainments now struggled to maintain the basic requirements of aristocratic dignity. Perhaps most painfully, the changing nature of European politics made his particular skills obsolete. The old world of court intrigue and personal diplomacy was giving way to a new order based on ideology and popular movements rather than aristocratic connections. Fersen found himself a relic of a vanished system, his expertise in the delicate arts of courtship and seduction irrelevant in an age of revolutionary politics. But even as he retreated from public life, enemies were watching and waiting. Soon, the whispers about his past would transform into something far more dangerous, as Sweden itself began to experience the revolutionary upheavals that would ultimately claim his life. By 1810, Sweden was a nation convulsing with political upheaval, military disasters, and popular rage that sought targets for its frustration. Count Axel von Fersen, now 54 years old and long removed from his days of Versailles glamour, found himself caught in the crossfire of forces he could neither control nor understand. The skills that had once protected him, charm, discretion, and aristocratic privilege, had become liabilities in a world where the common people were no longer willing to accept the old order's secrets and scandals. The immediate crisis began with the death of Crown Prince Carl August in May 1810, just months after his arrival from Denmark to become Sweden's heir apparent. According to contemporary medical reports, the prince died suddenly during military exercises, apparently from a stroke brought on by extreme heat. But in the fevered atmosphere of early 19th century Stockholm, medical explanations carried little weight against the more seductive power of conspiracy theories. Popular suspicion immediately focused on the old aristocratic families who had opposed the prince's appointment, and Fersen's name appeared prominently on every list. His decades-old reputation for political intrigue, combined with his association with foreign courts and failed royalist plots, made him a natural target for public anger. Pamphlets circulated through Stockholm's coffee houses, claiming that he had poisoned the crown prince on behalf of foreign enemies seeking to weaken Sweden. Historical records from the Stockholm police archives reveal that tensions had been building around Fersen for months before the prince's death. His continued correspondence with French émigrés and Austrian diplomats had been noted by Swedish intelligence services, who suspected him of activities that bordered on treason. More damaging were the persistent rumors about his personal life that had never been fully silenced, creating an image of decadent corruption that perfectly symbolized everything the common people resented about aristocratic privilege. The political climate was further poisoned by Sweden's recent military humiliations. The loss of Finland to Russia in 1809 had created a national trauma that demanded scapegoats. King Gustav IV, Adolf, had been deposed in a coup, and the entire political system was struggling to maintain legitimacy. In this atmosphere of national crisis, Fersen represented not just individual corruption, but the failure of an entire aristocratic system that had led Sweden to disaster. According to police reports and witness statements preserved in Swedish archives, threatening letters and anonymous warnings had been arriving at Fersen's residence for weeks before the fatal day. Some warned him to leave Stockholm immediately or face the consequences. Others made specific threats about what would happen if he dared to appear publicly during the Crown Prince's funeral procession. Yet Fersen, with what contemporaries described as either remarkable courage or fatal miscalculation, refused to be intimidated. On June 20th, 1810, exactly 19 years after his desperate flight from Varennes, he made the decision to attend the prince's funeral ceremony, despite warnings from friends and authorities alike. What happened next would become one of the most brutal political murders in Swedish history, as decades of hidden resentments finally exploded into homicidal rage. June 20th, 1810, began as a day of solemn ceremony and ended as one of the most shocking acts of public violence in Swedish history. Count Axel von Fersen ignoring desperate warnings from friends and authorities, attended Crown Prince Carl August's funeral procession in Stockholm. What happened next went far beyond political assassination. It became a savage act of collective rage that shocked even contemporaries accustomed to revolutionary violence. According to multiple eyewitness accounts preserved in Swedish court records, the attack began when Fersen's carriage was recognized in the funeral procession. A crowd that had gathered to mourn their fallen prince suddenly transformed into a murderous mob. They surrounded his vehicle, screaming accusations of treason and poison. Within minutes, what had been a religious ceremony became a scene of uncontrolled brutality. The details, documented by police investigators and horrified observers, reveal the extraordinary hatred that had been building against Fersen for years. The mob dragged him from his carriage and beat him with stones, clubs, and whatever weapons they could find. According to the official autopsy report, his body bore over 30 separate wounds. He was kicked, trampled, and finally beaten to death in the cobblestone square, while authorities either could not or would not intervene to save him. But why such extraordinary violence against one man? Historical analysis suggests multiple motivations converged on that fatal day. Political historians argue that Fersen became a symbol of aristocratic corruption in a nation desperate to blame someone for its military defeats and economic struggles. The common people saw in him everything they resented about the old order: foreign influence, court intrigue, and the privilege to betray his country without consequences. Yet contemporary accounts hint at darker undercurrents. Police reports mention that some in the crowd shouted specific accusations about his personal life, using language that suggested long-circulated rumors about his relationships had finally found their outlet. The intensity of the violence, far exceeding what would be necessary for simple political revenge, suggests that sexual scandal may have provided additional fuel for the crowd's fury. Modern historians debate whether the murder was spontaneous popular rage or a carefully orchestrated political assassination disguised as mob justice. Some evidence points to coordination among Fersen's enemies, who may have deliberately incited the crowd and ensured that authorities would be unable or unwilling to protect him. The convenient timing, removing a politically inconvenient figure while making it appear to be popular justice, suggests planning behind the apparent chaos. The irony of his death was profound and cruel. The man who had spent decades hiding his true nature to protect himself from society's judgment was ultimately destroyed by that same society in the most public and humiliating way possible. His carefully constructed image, his diplomatic achievements, and his genuine acts of courage and loyalty meant nothing in the face of popular rage and political convenience. Count Axel von Fersen died as he had lived, caught between public expectations and private truths, a victim of forces he could never fully control or escape. His story remains one of the most fascinating examples of how personal desire and political ambition can become fatally intertwined in the deadly theater of European power. If this hidden history has moved you, subscribe for more untold stories of courage, scandal, and tragedy that reveal the human cost of living authentically in an unforgiving world.